The spreadsheet returns! Welcome back, Bones and Ghouls. The Fallout New Vegas California Compliance Challenge returns because we never did the DLCs. Quick announcement before we get into things. The Discord is now open to the public again. Come on down and say hi and join us in community events like gaslighting Napoleon Bonaparte into watching Godzilla Final Wars so he can see the greatest acting performance of any combat sports athlete ever. I am not saying that ironically. Don Fry is the best human actor in any Godzilla movie. Okay, I gotta be honest. I was having a lot of fun playing Fallout New Vegas and just wanted an excuse to play more Fallout New Vegas, so we're doing the DLCs. Just as a quick refresher, here is a quick rundown of the rules, which I'm just gonna go over in real time as fast as I can, since last video, YouTube's compression made the fast-forwarded audio unintelligible. I must follow all California statutes related to firearms to the best of my ability in-game. I must play in hardcore mode and on very hard to make waiting periods meaningful. I am to be considered a private citizen in the eyes of the law as to not circumvent any statutes controlling firearms. I may only obtain firearms by lawfully purchasing them at a licensed vendor. I must pass a background check to purchase a firearm, meaning I must be liked by the nearest related faction. I must wait 10 in-game days before purchasing a firearm to use it. I must wait 30 in-game days between purchasing firearms. All weapons received as a quest reward are considered private party transfers and subject to all laws regulating those. Nothing shall be considered grandfathered in or a product of Freedom Week, as there is no way for the courier to have been alive for either of those periods. No grenades. No burst fire or fully automatic firearms. No assault-style weapons, meaning anything that might resemble an AK or AR pattern rifle. All firearms must carry no more than a maximum of 10 rounds per magazine or magazine equivalent. 50 caliber Browning machine gun, which some people had issues differentiating from other types of 50 caliber rounds last video, and any munitions at 60 caliber or higher are banned. All ammunition must be either purchased from a licensed firearms dealer or loaded by hand. I may not sell my hand loads to anyone, and I may not scavenge live ammo off killed enemies. No poisoned, armor-piercing, incendiary, or other types of ammunition with secondary forms of damage. No long guns on pistol grips. No weapons that have been modified to be concealable, such as short-barreled shotguns or silent pistols. No destructive devices. No explosives, improvised or otherwise, rockets, or things explicitly deemed to be a destructive device such as the riot shotgun or orbital laser targeting systems. Anything that has been explicitly banned in California, such as bear traps and flamethrowers that shoot longer than 10 feet, are banned in this challenge run too. And finally, I must be certified to be able to safely use my firearms, which here means I cannot be addicted to any chems while trying to purchase one and must meet all special and skill point requirements of a weapon before being allowed to use it. That is a lot of rules, and in case that got confusing, I've linked the spreadsheet with the full list of rules, sub-rules, and disambiguations, a complete list of all the weapons I am and am not allowed to use, and even the statutes cited in the description. We're going by black letter law here, by the way, which is because if we waited for Duncan v. Bonta to have a meaningful resolution, we will be here for so long it will be time to go into the vaults IRL before we get a ruling. Thanks to Triggernomics again for helping me vet my gun ban list. I also want to take a sec and thank all of you, not just for how well the video did, but also for giving me a ton of help and pointers I needed to learn how to mod the game for stability's sake. Through all of you guys, I learned how to set up the mod manager and follow the steps in Viva New Vegas, which, after installing a few mods, has been a wholly transformative experience. I never modded Fallout New Vegas or any Gamebryo engine game before this because, well, the Steam version of Fallout New Vegas kind of was the fixed version for me for the longest time. So this right here is my original copy of Fallout New Vegas, all the way back from 2010. And there's a couple notable things about it. For one, if it will focus this time, because this is also a very faded thing, you can see right here, it has the original street date warning on it. Oh yeah, you can kind of see it there. And for another, we got this right here. For those of you too young to remember this, there was this service that predated Xbox Live on PC called Games for Windows Live. And it was the single worst thing ever for PC gaming. This was just, it ate all your processing power, it hindered the games that it was on, it was a miserable mess, it had a terrible overlay, it made everything clunky, like it was so bad that even though I was a PC gamer who loved BioShock, I intentionally bought BioShock 2 for my PlayStation 3 instead of my PC because BioShock 2 was a Games for Windows game. And the big thing about that was the Steam version years and years later was like the New Vegas like Game of the Year edition with all the DLCs in it that we got years later didn't have this. And as far as me and many other people were concerned, that was the fixed version of New Vegas. Also, just insult to injury, as you see right here, on top of needing to use games for Windows Live, you also needed, oh, the focus is terrible today, but it said, oh yeah, you have to use Steam for this too. So you had to run 2 game overlays concurrently. Both were known at the time for being really bad and really processor intensive. Like, we didn't always used to love Steam. Steam used to be very clunky. Steam's come so far. So this, while you could goof around with mods and console stuff, was very clunky and at the times nigh unplayable. And yeah, as far as I was concerned, that was the fixed version with not having games for Windows Live in a dramatically improved version of the Steam client. So this run is going to be, for one, a fresh character, as it'd be pretty lame to just go back to my save from the previous challenge run right before the Battle of Hoover Dam and just stomp my way through the DLCs. And for another, it has some new rules. On top of everything previously established, which is that I must obey all California firearms laws to the best of my ability, and additional rules that prevent me from circumventing them, such as playing on hardcore mode, I also have to follow all of these rules for the DLC, including what is considered to be a licensed firearm vendor, which means there are no vendors that fit the criteria in any of the DLCs. Also, I am only allowed to get as high as level 10 before I must start the DLCs. And in the event that I finish them under-leveled, I have until level 15 to get to the second, 20 to get to the third, and 25 for the fourth. I base this on how Lonesome Road has a recommended level of 25 for starting it, and it being unambiguously the hardest DLC. Also, no Eddie this time around. Even if we argue that his machine spirit makes him not a weapon but a fellow traveler, he's just way too OP. Now, real quick, before we get into the suffering, this video is made possible by viewers like you who support me on Patreon, with one-time pledges over on Ko-Fi, and now on YouTube memberships. I've enabled YouTube memberships now for those of you that want to support me and get early access to videos, but for whatever reasons there might be, you can't or won't use Patreon. Becoming a member on the channel is a great help to me and will grant you the same benefits as being at the early video tier on Patreon. So if that's all you want, or you just want to support me however you can, just do one or the other, whichever works best for you. Any support, any way you can give helps me make these videos so much better, and I thank all of you for the support you've given me through all these years. Now let's get even more California compliant. New video, new build. This time around, I'm going even harder into my min-maxing, keeping the maxed out intelligence for the skill points and cutting deeper into my charisma and luck stats to shore up my strength, endurance, and agility. Also, this time around, I'm making it a point to take the trigger discipline perk like before, and also the perk that gives me higher consistent damage at the cost of less crits. Luck is our dump stat, so it makes no sense to play into crit builds. We'll be using whatever means we can to boost our special along the way, but we're making our own luck because we need the perks that increase our damage threshold or intense training to boost our weapon related skills more than we need random chance. Also, a lot of the crit centric weapons are also stealth or concealable weapons, which we can't use anyway. While we will still need a lot of caps in this run, there are other ways to make an absurd amount of money in New Vegas than just cruising the strip with a ton of points dumped into our luck stat. More on that later though. We have until level 10 to do whatever we think is the best thing for building out our character and getting them ready for the DLCs. We can go wherever we can get away with going, do whichever quest we can find at our level, and get whatever items fit into our rule set so long as we're below level 10. That turns out to be easier said than done, but we did get a few important things accomplished. So I most certainly did listen to all of your guys' ideas on top of my own introspections about the last run. There's even a whole tab on the spreadsheet I linked where I logged all the stuff you guys told me from the last video, as well as all the things I learned to make the challenge better, or at least more doable. We'll definitely be doing some things beyond just our stats differently. First off, yes, I did go looking for Chance's knife at the beginning of the game. It did not go well. I am severely underleveled for dealing with full-grown cazadors, stealth, or direct combat. And I was getting utterly annihilated every time they detected me, which with my understandably very low stealth stat was a lot. I thought about it after quite a few tries and decided that even if this weapon would be absurdly good for the early game, I just didn't have the means to reasonably acquire it with nothing but a varmint rifle and a couple of basic melee weapons, and that my time was better spent doing other things to get ready. I also did consider what some people suggested about making a beeline for the divide to grab the H&H Tools nail gun, but that was also something that fell apart under scrutiny. We're at such a low level that any sort of encounter there, even the starting ones, was a death sentence. And because of the run-up, every skill point mattered. We just didn't have it in our budget to put the usually nominal amount of skill points you need into science and lockpicking and stealth to slip our way into the silo and grab the first available nail gun. In theory, the nail gun is a great early game weapon, as it's also the only automatic quote-unquote weapon we can use, as by definition it's not a firearm, and has a very reliable way for us to get more munitions, but what we'd have to give up to get it would put us in an uphill battle for a lot of the game, until we could level up and get more skill points to balance ourselves out, and doing other stuff like shooting guns properly to do damage and not dying. Another big issue with running the nail gun in the early game is that one of the rules we previously discussed is we have to meet all safety and certification requirements for firearms ownership in order to use a weapon, which here means we need to meet all the special and skill point requirements before we can equip it. The nail gun requires a gun skill of 75, meaning that based on what we need to just survive getting the thing, we might not have enough skill points to spec into using it before we hit level 10, even if we neglect all other applicable skills like melee or survival for like being able to heal. And finally, the nail gun's kind of meh compared to others. Like, it's a great idea on paper, but just not very practical for what we're doing. So let's talk about the things I ended up doing differently for the start of this run that ended up being a lot better. The first major thing I did was I followed through with the Good Springs questline, but this time I made it a point to stay neutral during the showdown, never starting an engagement with any of the powder gangers during the fight, so that this way I'd be able to get up to the reputation I need to buy a weapon from Chet by passing the background check, but I'd also not be vilified by the powder gangers as I never directly attacked one of them. They're not fond of me for my involvement with defending Good Springs, but they will not attack me on sight, which is very important. It's important because that means when we liberate Prim from the Raiders, we can go to the NCRCF and recruit the ex-sheriff there that was the new sheriff of Prim, meaning that Prim is not formally affiliated with the NCR. Previously, Prim was a no-go for acquiring a weapon because it becomes an NCR-affiliated town, and you're not able to meet the imposed standard of being liked by the NCR in order to pass the background check to buy a firearm until much later in the game. And by the time you do, there's nothing there that you'd want to buy. Prim is now neutral in the big faction game, and taking some liberties of assuming that the reputation we have in Prim would be the same as the next nearest reputation having area, Good Springs, because in case you didn't know, Prim doesn't have a distinct reputation because it was cut from the game. This means we could purchase a gun here, and once the Mojave Express outpost gets set up again, they have a cowboy repeater for sale, meaning we get a staple of the run much earlier than last time. This makes life so much easier, like when we're trying to make it out to the strip, because one of the bigger issues we had with crossing the Mojave during this challenge is that we didn't really have a decent long gun until after solving all the quests in Novak. Speaking of things that made it much harder for us in the last iteration of the challenge, I regretfully did not choose violence at the mere sight of Wolfheads and Kulta. Life's hard enough without the Legion kill squads coming out of the walls every time I leave town. The other thing I did was attempt to maximize my bed rotting to try and re-roll the Good Springs General Store to try and get a 357 revolver before heading out for Prim, since the store stocks rotate twice a week, and while it's a rare-ish spawn at Chet's store, the 357 revolver does show up sometimes. I spent a solid 3 weeks and change doing this, and ironically, the only time it showed up for me was when I was unable to purchase it thanks to not meeting the reputation requirements yet. This did, however, have a silver lining of proving the concept that I can bed rot indefinitely at the little trailer by one of the Good Springs well pumps because the water from the well is clean enough for sustained drinking, and by the time I run out of food, the geckos will respawn and I can hunt them to replenish my food stocks. I still would have liked the revolver though. Fast forwarding back to the near present, the real game-changing move we made was now that we didn't need to worry about getting our hands on the cowboy repeater in Novak, we can get another gun here with the caps we've got on hand. I've also been putting a lot of points into barter to try to get us better prices, and we have just enough money to get the unique weapon, that gun, after resolving all the Novak related quests. That gun is a unique variant of the 5.56 pistol, and is also a throwback to the original pistol in in the CRPG Fallout games. This is the ideal weapon for this run. It is a fairly cheap pistol that you can get early in the game, it holds well less than 10 rounds, has low skill requirements, and it also counts as a revolver, meaning that it's affected by the cowboy perk we're going to get for buffing other weapons. And best of all, you can get a lot of ammo for it for really cheap. Back in Good Springs, you can have a conversation with Chet, which is a sort of tutorial on how alternate types of ammo work, since Chet will sell you surplus ammo, specifically 5.56 surplus ammo. 5.56 surplus does have its setbacks, but its pros far outweigh the cons, in that it is a crap ton of ammo for dirt cheap, and we get a little damage buff from it too. We will be using this weapon all the way up until the end of the game. One last thing I did differently from the last run leading up to level 10 was recruiting Boone, since I can't have Eddie. I may as well take him along, and then I tried to check out Camp Forlorn Hopes as a means to get some medium armor while doing the quest, and holy moly, do those ghoulified NCR soldiers tank damage. I burned through almost all of my ammo and was reliant on Boone finishing the job with some of these people, because the combination of ghouls regeneration in irradiated areas and that they had some armor on that could be considered pretty hefty by early game standards made them absolute brick houses. At least I got the armor. Level 10 came up a lot faster than I thought it would. You don't realize how much XP you're getting doing all the quests you need to get a good reputation in an area until you see the level ups. I ended up making it only as far as resolving the hostage situation in Boulder before I hit level 10, and then I had to turn around before so much as crossing the desert to get to the strip. I didn't even get to the 188 trading post. Even with a 10 in intelligence and the educated perk, 10 levels of skill points is a lot less than you think it is when you've got a restricted rule set as we do, and need to be very careful about where you allocate things. I made it a point to get enough points in repair to be able to make our own weapon repair kits, because we have a big problem. Not a single firearm that we can purchase or use in all of Old World Blues is good for us. Like, we can't use any of them, and the sink isn't really what we considered a licensed dealer anyway. And everything there is banned due to like rate of fire and magazine capacity. That's why it's so important for us to have the best firearms we can possibly get in the base game before heading out, and why we need to grab those cases of surplus ammo now before we leave, and also like get the points to be able to hand load later on too. So I stop off at Chet's to grab as many cases of surplus 5.56 as he's got, and I make my way to the drive-in theater. There are a few reasons why we're going to do Old World Blues first. For one, there are no restrictions on what we can bring in whatsoever. While Honest Arts is supposed to be the first DLC you do, you have to drop off a ton of stuff. Since we're only at level 10 and need to spec into combat skills in order to use our weapons, we won't be able to get all the skill points we need to pass the various speech checks involved with bringing a decent amount of gear into Zion, and the only weapon we can use in dead money is going to be a dead weight, as there's no way we're getting up to 75 energy weapons at level 10 without being so lopsided we can't survive everything else. We're also playing on very hard mode with hardcore mode activated, and when you do that, you are constantly taking damage anytime you are indoors in the Sierra Madre, and I don't want to go into that until we've got some countermeasures for it. There's also how I was playing a casual run of FMB to test out all my mods and make sure everything was working, and on the very hard and hardcore modes, Honest Arts is a bit of a doozy at lower levels, even without limiting what you can and cannot use, because all the poison the enemies use makes things a very rough time. So Old World Blues it is. We spawn into the sink, and we immediately pawn off the doggy gun as we are not allowed to use it. We're gonna consider this a gun buyback. And we put the Sonic Blaster into storage, because while we cannot use it as a weapon, we do need to use it to complete the story, so we can only take it out to be used specifically as a tool to remove barriers. With that out of the way, welcome to Old World Blues. There is no encounter design here. You are going to get jumped. Okay, so something you should know about Fallout New Vegas' DLCs is that there isn't any regional enemy spawns to act as game balance like there is in the main game. New Vegas' DLCs operate like the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, Fallout 3, and Fallout 3's DLCs. That means that all enemies are going to be aggressively level scaled with you, and outside of instance areas like inside the lab or during scripted set pieces, the overworld won't have set encounters, and stuff will just appear out of the ether, always around any corner that the game thinks it can get away with it, and and if you're moving around a lot, sometimes you will catch the game just spawning enemies out of thin air. I am getting absolutely thrashed. So I came in with that gun and about 500 rounds of 5.56 surplus ammo, and after getting into the DLC, I grabbed one of those hatchets the lobotomites carry because they're a perfectly serviceable melee weapon that we meet the stats for and is allowed for the run. These and the cowboy repeater work fine on the lobotomites so long as they spawn in far away enough for me to get the drop on them, but lobotomites are not nearly the only kind of enemy in Old World Blues. I start following the main quest of the DLC and I get to the point where I'm in the first lab trying to get the X-22 antenna, a plot device and unique weapon that we'll be using on and off, but as soon as we grab the thing, the quest flag triggers and Dr. Mobius starts screaming at us over the PA and sixes Robo-Scorpions on us. The Robo-Scorpions have far too high of a damage threshold for any of our existing weapons to meaningfully harm them, and we can't use the X-22 antenna yet because we do not nearly have the points in melee to meet the 75 melee requirement, so we just have to run. We barely limp back into the think tank, which thankfully is the one place where the enemies will not chase the player character into. We are getting absolutely hosed out there. This may as well be the Legion ambushes because it's hard for us to explore Big Empty at all. You get a few buffs right off the bat from starting Old World Blues, but you are going to need every buff possible in order to survive. Lucky for us, we can make a beeline to the various labs where enemies are softer and squishier than the Robo-Scorpions and the trauma override harnesses too, who are really a problem in this run, so we can utilize what we've got for now. For now though, we managed to find a Proton axe, which technically isn't a firearm and doesn't really violate any of the other weapon statutes. And it's doing the job just fine. In fact, it's basically carrying us. We focus on doing the basic stuff to get things like the stealth suit and more modules for the sink so that we can make more stuff and better our odds. Stuff like getting the water fountain good to go and also help Muggy like start processing bugs again, and the book depository, just anything we can get to get more raw materials. We are up to our ears in raw materials, and we are also getting enough skill points to not only make a ton of weapon repair kits with our raw materials, but also we finally have enough to get the jury rigger perk, which lets us use our old NCR armor to top off the stealth suit, which has better stats anyway thanks to all the buffs we're getting for it. Ammo is less of a problem now too, because there's just so much stinking scrap metal in all the labs. And the only reason why I'm not making a ton of ammo immediately is because I'm holding off until we can get the hand loader perk and start really getting our money's worth out of the cowboy repeater. After a few levels, we can finally explore a bit without getting annihilated. We are still getting wrecked every time a group of higher scaled enemies show up, and there are certain places that we just cannot go because we get pancaked by a bunch of stinking plants every time we get too close to that one canyon. However, we are leveling up a ton. I went into Old World Blues right at the level 10 mark. No extra farming to get to like 1 experience away from level 11 like this would be if it was a Nuzlocke run, just level 10 and no extra experience. By the time I leave the Big Empty, I will be at level 25, almost level 26. We are picking up stats and skill points like crazy. It's not necessarily getting that much easier as we still got that Oblivion style level scaling. However, now that we can use the Proton axe and the X-22 antenna and have the skills we need to keep our armor topped up, it's manageable. It also helps that doing all these side quests means we get all the upgrades to our stealth suit and find the better version of the funny blue halo thingy, so our stats are looking pretty good. The Sync Central Control Unit doesn't have an FFL, so we can't buy weapons and ammo from it, but that's not a problem as our California compliant arsenal is handling things fine now that we've got the skills needed to use the good stuff, and we've got hand loader too to make the stuff for our weapons that we brought in far more effective. We're still using the Sync a lot to sell things because we need money, a lot of money. Dead money on hardcore can be a doozy, and we're going to need to get the HP regen implant if we want to blunt the constant stream of damage whenever we're outside the Sierra Madre. There's also a bunch of implants we can get right here in Old World Blues. We're not going to get all of the implants at the Sync now, but some of the things like the stealth speed increase and later on the Cazador damage buff are going to be very handy. Lucky for us, we're also finding a lot of Proton axes on the lobotomites through the sheer volume of encounters we've been having with them, and thanks to getting the jury rigger perk, we can use the throwing variants of the axes to repair the much more valuable two-handed ones. We're basically able to clean out the Sync's cap supply every time we make a vendor run with more than enough Proton axes left over to clean it out the next time too. This is going to be very, very important for the whole run as we are going to need a lot of cash caps since we have to buy all our firearms from designated vendors and cannot pick them up off fallen enemies or ones that are just laying on the ground. It takes a few tries to get the final encounter with Dr. Mobius right, and then when we do, while we can't pass any of the speech checks to resolve things in the sync because we've needed to put every skill point we've had into survival-based skills like stealth, repair, and weapons, we did do all the little side quests for the members of the think tank, so that means that we can just not kill them all. I would have felt really bad about killing Rusty Venture. He's gone through enough in his life. Ending Old World Blues also has the happy benefit of, on top of allowing us to keep all the buffs we got from being operated on at the beginning of the DLC, we also get a new buff for completing it, plus all the stuff we found along the way, and we can come back here at any time we like and use the very handy facilities the Sync has for things like getting gathered foodstuffs in the garden and using all of our crafting materials we've hoarded to make ammo and repair kits as we need. There's no way we can lug all this stuff around, and it's a huge step up from the Novak hotel room as the water here is clean and lets us take more water with us if we find empty bottles. Old World Blues started out as pretty rough, but we're certainly stronger for it. We've got a ton of buffs, some solid gear that's going to carry us for a while, and a ton of caps that we are going to immediately spend. We haven't discovered the location of the Happy Trails caravan yet, so I consider it fair that we can stop at some places along the way to help us get ready, so long as we aren't doing anything to gain levels. Like gun runners. We presently can't buy any firearms here because we're not liked by Freeside and therefore do not pass the background check, but we can buy combat armor, which we can then use to repair our stealth suit. The stealth suit has all the damage threshold we need for honest arts, and the buffs we get from wearing it make it far more useful than any other medium or heavy armors. What's also on the way is the New Vegas Clinic. After buying that combat armor, we don't quite have enough caps to get everything we want here, but we can get the monocyte breeder implant, which will give us more regen on top of the Valiance thingy. It's not going to be enough to completely counteract any poisons we might get hit with, or the poison gas in the Sierra Madre later on, but it's going to certainly help. We make it to the Happy Trails meetup site, and since we spent all our points on skills we need to immediately survive or use weapons out in the wasteland, we don't have the skills we need to pass the speech checks to get a decent amount of stuff into Zion, so we have to go back to our home in Novak and drop off a lot of stuff, including Boone. We're cutting it almost down to the bone here, and another benefit of the stealth suit is that it's considerably lighter than heavy armors. Between the ammo we need to take with us and the weapons we can use ourselves since there are no licensed dealers in Zion, we have to give up a lot of our utility items down to our purified water stash for staying hydrated. That's a calculated choice though, because the water out there is drinkable. We head out and the ambush set piece happens and I think we might be a little over-leveled for this. Even with the level scaling in the DLCs, most of the enemies we encounter on the scripted set piece path to Joshua Graham are still humanoid enemies that have special related stat blocks instead of just having a set of stats like a monster. Sure, they'll hit hard, but I'm more concerned with Follow's Shock dying than I am with taking any meaningful damage. Sure, there will be stuff that can easily kill us later on, like the level-scaled Yao Guai and the plant monsters from Vault 22 making a return, but for now, I'm feeling kinda silly being here. That was until I got out of the set-piece fights and into the meat of the DLC. Holy hell, who gave all these tribals anti-material rifles and thermic lances? Since the game can't beef up the raw stats of humanoid enemies, it does the next best thing. It beefs up their gear. We are past level 25 now, which means that if this were the base game, we'd be assumedly at endgame leveling. So the game is going to give them the next best thing, endgame level weapons. I consider myself lucky if the white legs are only coming at me with merely brush guns, which is a little painful as once I kill them, I cannot loot their weapons and ammo off them as it would not be lawfully acquired. We're pretty beefed up from getting all those levels in Old World Blues on top of all the buffs you get through the course of the DLC, so we can take exactly one hit from an anti-material rifle, and that is provided that we are at full health and our armor is in good condition. Well, at least this keeps things interesting. But we've got to have our head on a swivel while traveling around because we need to see what spawns in as soon as it does and act accordingly. Usually meaning closing the distance as soon as possible, because while the weapons the white legs have are hard level scaled, their armor is scripted to be the tribal war gear, which doesn't have a whole lot of damage threshold. Most of them go down in only a couple swings of the Proton axe. So this is going by smoothly. Like, so smoothly, it's just speeding by. I sorted my files by DLCs, and Honest Starts has the shortest time by far, taking almost half as much time as the next smallest DLC, Dead Money. We are severely overleveled, and even with the enemies having amped up weapons and the Yao Guai being a massive wall of stats thanks to Oblivion leveling, we steamroll our way through most of the challenges here, and it makes us notice how simplistic the quest lines in Honest Starts are. Oh, I should also mention that after doing a bit of reading up on it, I think FMV's DLC level scaling works by having a bunch of different enemies that look visually the same, but only one type of them will spawn in depending on your level. That way they scale with the player's level, but they are still quote-unquote the same enemy. Honest Starts is very much carried by standout characters like Joshua Graham and the pretty scenery that is a ton of fun to explore, as the main quest line is basically a series of fetch quests followed by a big fight. I think the main problem is that being over-leveled and having buffs like the ones we have that makes us immune to poison from Old World Blues makes Honest Arts the equivalent of going on a dark ride in a theme park with a pair of night vision goggles on and then looking everywhere except for where the ride wants you to look in the first place. We aren't worried about getting poisoned or not being able to hold our own in a fight, so we're breezing through the bulk of the quests. The exploration is a lot more fun here than the quests. As while Old World Blues loaded me up on crafting materials for things like ammo and weapon repair kits, Honest Arts has all that cave fungus and other campfire ingredients, and thanks to how the healing stats scale in New Vegas, we now have a near endless supply of cave fungus to make healing poultices, so we have no reason to use stim packs ever, as the healing poultice utterly eclipses them even once we get up to 100 medicine. It's a shame that the survivalist rifle is just laying on the ground and therefore we cannot use it, as that's not lawfully purchasing it, because this would be the ideal weapon for the run. We can, however, use the set of NCR Ranger gear in the survivalist hideout though, but it's eclipsed by the stealth suit, so it only serves as repair fodder, since, well, we don't have a lot of means to repair out here. The only real challenge we have here, outside of taking on the level scale plant monsters from Vault 22 and fighting She as part of that one quest line, is that our ammo is getting stretched real thin. Enemies aren't dropping the shell casings we need to make more 5.56 or 357 Magnum, because they're all on that 4570 government, which will admittedly be handy in a bit, and thus we are limited to whatever raw materials the survivalist has in his hideouts for making more ammo at the reloading bench. This ends up making us use a lot more melee, which is fine because at this point I have melee 100 and the Proton axe is turning everything that gets too close to it into beef jerky. It's just kind of a bummer though, because I'd like to try using California compliant weapons, which, to be fair, we are still doing, and I guess a part of this challenge is that, we have to be mindful of how we use our ammo because we can't readily restock in the middle of a DLC. There are a few things that manage to kill us. Like I was talking about earlier, Vault 22's plant monster encroachment is a problem for us as much as it is for the setting. This is why it's so problematic for us to be low on ammo, because it's just not a good idea to get up close to these things. Then there was also She, but I ended up dying more to the packs of Yao Guai leading up to her den than her herself. If anything, I probably should have been counting reloads as deaths too, as I reloaded a ton of times, not because I died, but because the companions in Honest Arts are extremely squishy, and unlike the enemies, they do not get level scaled weapons, so they're only really good for their buffs and the quests they give. It's a shame, but again, we are really over leveled for this. As we finish the DLC, I put it up to a vote in the Twitch chat, and we decided that that box at the very end of the DLC that has all the unique items like Joshua Graham's armor and a light shining in the darkness does not count as a private party transfer, as Joshua Graham did not give us the pistol himself. So while a light shining in the darkness would have been a great weapon to use for the rest of the run, possibly even replacing that gun, it wasn't lawfully transferred to us, so we gotta leave it. It has been far too long since we had a cooking segment, so we're gonna do a new favorite of mine. I actually made this recipe up as an attempt to cobble something together from some emergency canned food that was gonna go bad, and some extra ground turkey I had from the last video's chili. It turned out far better than I expected, and after a bit of iteration, this is 100% a mainstay in my recipe book and worthy of a cooking segment: turkey pie. Let's get started on that filling. First off, we're gonna get started with our veggies. Finally dice a small or medium-sized yellow onion and get it into a high-walled saucepan with some olive oil on medium heat. Once that's got a couple minutes to itself, finally chop off 1 bunch's worth of celery and add that in. You're gonna want that to cook down for a bit, like a good 10 to 15 minutes. In fact, if you let these flavors deepen for long enough, you don't even really need to add any spices. I'd suggest you add them anyway. Personally, I like a sprinkle of some lotteries and some black pepper, maybe a pinch of salt directly onto the turkey later on, but you don't need to, just because it's got enough flavor as it is. Speaking of the turkey, once all your veggies are nice and fragrant, add in a pound of ground turkey. I'm using 93% lean here, but if you want to, you can add something fattier. It works either way. Add in that turkey, use a wooden spoon to break up all the clumps and mix it together well with the veggies and the oil you've already got in the pan. And once it's nice and browned, it's time to put in the good part of the filling. Take a family-sized can of condensed cream of mushroom soup. Do not dilute it, just pour that sucker right in there and give it a stir. This is why you arguably don't need to season and especially not salt the meat and veggie mix, because the condensed soup is already well seasoned and very salty as it is. As a point of reference, when I calculated the nutrition facts for a slice of this pie, it had over 1,500 milligrams of sodium without any added salt. Lastly, once everything else is mixed in and bubbling just a little, add in 1 to 2 cups of frozen mixed veggies into the saucepan and stir until well incorporated. Once it all gets mixed in, lower that heat so it won't bubble too violently and make a mess on your stovetop, and then maybe let this cook down for a bit longer so we can get to the pie part of this pie. So grab a pie dish, I like the glass ones, and give it a good spray down. Then take a set of pie crust from the store because we don't have time to be messing around with making our own, which best case scenario will be identical to the store-bought one. Now we're gonna let that sit out for a sec and at least get it close to room temp because we don't want these to crack and break too much, and being cold means being brittle means it breaks easy. Just think of it more as time for the pie to cook down more filling wise and the flavors to get to know each other even better. Melt about half a stick of butter, brush some onto the rim of the pie dish so that we don't have anything sticking to it later on and the edge of the pie has a nice crispy underside. And then once the pie crusts are warm enough to have to not worry about breakage, take one of them, unroll it, and gently press it down into your pie dish. Make sure that it's nice and flush. Now we are going to slowly, carefully pour out our filling onto the bottom crust. Use a spoon or something to help level it out if you need to, and then gently drape the top crust over everything. Now, take a sharp knife and carefully cut some ventilation slits into the top of the crust so that nothing explodes. And then optionally, use a fork to press down and make a little pattern on the edge of the crust. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees of Freedom heat units or 205 Funny Baguette units. Use the rest of your melted butter to brush down the top of the pie crust and then toss that sucker in. I suggest that you put your pie not on the bottom rack, but maybe the top or middle rack if you have a larger oven with 3 racks, and then place a sheet pan on the bottom rack to prevent any dripping from getting stuck in the bottom of your oven. Even if you ended up letting this cook down a lot, a little bit of the filling will probably drip out. You're gonna wanna let this cook for 45 minutes to an hour until that crust is nice, golden, and flaky. We're basically just cooking the crust here that's been insulated by the filling since everything else inside the pie has already been well cooked, and this just benefits from more cooking to let those flavors come together even better. Once the time's up, take it out of the oven and leave it in the pan, preferably somewhere elevated like a cooking rack. And someone is here. I'm sorry, the boy has hopped up on the desk because he heard me talking about snacks. What a little snacker. Are you gonna sit here and behave? Oh no, he's going for the mic. He's gonna... No, stop. Okay. You gonna be okay there? Cool. Where were we? Once the time's up, take it out of the oven and leave it in the pan, preferably somewhere elevated like a cooling rack to allow for even cooling, and let it rest for 30 minutes to an hour. You really want everything to settle down so it doesn't just turn into mush when you try to cut a slice. Another nice thing about this pie is that on top of being really tasty and really easy to make is also that it is really cheap. I've never paid more than 20 bucks for all the ingredients to make this, and wouldn't be surprised if you could get that to under 15 by using store brand items only. This full recipe is available with a standalone video that contains a full write-up and my best guess at nutrition facts too over at patreon.com/charlatanwonder. Patreon isn't only a great way to get this and all the other recipes I've made over the years, but also goes a long way in supporting the channel. Now let's go get kidnapped by Father Elijah. Okay, it's time for Dead Money. This is the one that I was the most worried about by far, because while we are given the hollow rifle at the start of the DLC, which counts as a private party transfer and therefore is lawful, that requires 75 in energy weapons, which is a massive investment for a type of weapon where there are effectively 2 viable options for this run. Meaning, we were so busy investing our skill points in literally everything else to survive, so we don't have those skill points in energy weapons. I don't think we've put a single point in energy weapon up until this point. Also, again, there are no vendors that we could consider to be a licensed firearm dealer, so we can't buy ammo for the weapons we have, and there are only so many drained microfusion cells we could get anyway. We've got the science skill points to recycle microfusion cells efficiently, but it's unviable. We basically have to do a melee only run of dead money. I've been building up a lot of my skill points to prepare for this. My melee and stealth have been maxed out for a while, not counting skill books I used after getting to 100, and I've got the repair skills I need to constantly be topping off my favorite gear as efficiently as possible. And I've got the cash to get that damage threshold implant, so between toughness and that, I should be able to tank hits from the level scaled ghost people. It's high time to head over to the abandoned Brotherhood of Steel bunker anyway, because thanks to Honest Arts having many survival ingredients but very little crafting ingredients, we are out of ammo. If anything, going off the dead money now is going to be helpful to our situation because we won't have to worry about ammunition for a bit. So yeah. Dead Money turned out to be the easiest DLC of the bunch, with a couple exceptions. We have maxed out our melee skill, and the Cosmic Knife has a boosted chance of dismemberment, which you need to properly kill the ghost people. The only time I had any serious pause while playing through the game was if I didn't remember where one of the radio emitters was. Lucky for me, the throwable knife spears are easily able to hit the radio speakers, even if it takes a little finagling. I died exactly twice before getting into the Sierra Madre, and both of those were from me not getting to the radio emitters in time, or just forgetting where they were since it's been a while since I played this DLC. I don't even think I even got to dangerously low health from combat at any time during the run-up to getting inside of the casino. Between this and how Honest Arts was, I realized that there just wasn't enough challenge to make a story through line for this video, and I'm real sorry about that because that's my favorite part of making these videos. The only real story here is that I got jumped a lot in Old World Blues and then transformed into a steamroller. There is one issue I had in Dead Money that was less of a challenge and more of a minor annoyance. Level scaling strikes again. Ghost people have some of the highest stealth detection of any enemy in New Vegas, and since they're non-humanoid characters, or at least they can't equip gear like humanoids do, all their stats get level scaled. This means that stealth is now absolutely not an option, and that as soon as any ghost person even has the potential to have a line of sight with me, they are aggroed. No, really, sometimes they will see me even when looking away from me. This isn't much of a problem now, but it's gotta be an issue later. So getting into the casino was easy, and now that I'm in the casino, it's just more of me smacking the ghost people so hard they fly into the ceiling as their limbs cease to exist. Sure, the holograms instantly detect me as soon as I'm somewhere where there isn't a wall between me and them, but I move fast enough while sneaking thanks to the Old World Blues implant that I can slip by them fast enough so that isn't a problem. The hardest part of the Sierra Madre leading up to the vault was that I kept getting turned around inside the suites trying to find Christine, because thankfully, dog's stealth detection seems to be normal-ish. I did have to fight Dean Domino though, because I just couldn't find a certain thing to make him surrender. This isn't even feeling like a proper part of the challenge, it's just a melee run with some theoretical rules that don't even come into play. We still need to do it though, as we have to go through all the DLCs, and we're going to need those gold bars in order to finance all the stuff we need for Lonesome Road. And that's where the problem happens. We cannot do the gold bar trick. We cannot let go of poverty. We cannot bamboozle Father Elijah. I saved and reloaded, trying to get the gold bars out of the vault and into my bank account more times than I had died in the entire run up until this point. I have all the necessary perks for doing it. I even looked up multiple video guides on stream because I thought I was going crazy, and it turned out I was indeed doing everything right. I was just severely over-leveled. The level scale is unavoidable. If I had gone into Old World Blues any lower, I wouldn't have ended well for the thing. I wouldn't have even gotten through it, or I just alternatively rocket up to the same level by the sheer exposure to high-level enemies. I naturally just snowball up to level 35 by the time I'm in the vault chamber in Dead Money, and unfortunately, Father Elijah's stealth detection is level scale too. Even after following the guides to do this to a T and my own experience attempting this in the past, because I'm at such a high level and therefore Elijah's detection is scaled up to impossible standards, the moment I stop physically touching the power thingy near the door to the vault that he comes out of to try and escape through it, Elijah instantaneously detects me and the door is sealed off just as fast. We presently have a sneak skill of 117 thanks to a combination of getting 100 points of investment, finding skill books after hitting the base 100, and wearing the stealth armor that is available in Dead Money, and using a stealth boy that gives us an extra 100 sneak plus the stealth field. But Elijah will see us no matter what. Short of overtly cheating by using the console to set my player character to a lower level and thus allowing me to have a chance at sneaking by Elijah, there is no way to do this. I'm not going to cheat though, so I have to settle. I ditch almost all of my items down to clothing and a couple things of unique gear I want to keep, and I get out of the vault chamber grabbing as many gold bars as I can normally carry before getting encumbered. And I hope that 6 bars will be enough to get everything I need. This just leaves Lonesome Road, a DLC already known for being extremely tough with a bunch of nasty enemies and, other things. Lonesome Road also has another noteworthy feature in that it is the only DLC that once you start it, you are free to return to the main game at any time. We're going to take advantage of that, and we're also going to do a little prep before heading out there. First off, it turns out that 6 bars was just enough because I can afford to get the medicine stick, the unique hunting rifle, and all the other specialized implants at the clinic before heading out. I'm also able to avoid bed rotting to get through the waiting periods for my new firearms by just going over to the Happy Trails caravan meeting place, traveling to Zion, and then immediately traveling back. This not only skips the 10-day waiting period, but also gets us to nearly the 30-day mark where we can go and purchase another firearm. It's even more effective than bed rotting too, because now that I've completed the DLC, I can enter it without managing my carry weight, and because the travel is automatic, I don't have to worry about food or water like I would if I was just passing the time in-game by sleeping. I check my gear, load up on ammo, and head out to the divide, bracing myself to get talked at for hours on end. Ed E is here as he's part of the story and also a crutch for the player upkeep, as while the commissary units can vend you things, there are very few crafting spaces in the divide. I've also made the call that because I needed to progress, I am allowed to pick up and equip the laser detonator. However, I may only use it to clear the warheads when I have made sure that all enemies that could possibly be damaged by the detonation are dealt with. Things are going okay in Lonesome Road. Since I have the ability to manufacture higher tier ammo like the 5.56 match load ammo for that gun, it ends up being the workhorse in a lot of fights against marked men because it gets past their armor and the ammo for it is cheap enough to where I can save the 4570 government for the big stuff. I have absurd amounts of 5.56 and still haven't burned through the massive stockpile of weapon repair kits that I made back in Old World Blues, so I can keep running the match load through that gun to pick off individual marked men that come after me at close range, use a unique hunting rifle to try and pick off a few in small groups with sneak attacks, and save the brush gun for when things get bad. And it's mostly working. Tunnelers are a problem, but not too serious of one. Death claws are surprisingly trivial since they're used as set pieces and rarely have any sort of backup, and I've got the medicine stick that does a lot of concentrated damage for a distance. It's also going so smoothly that we start taking stock of other things, like just how much Ulysses yaps at us. Did you know that the average conversation with Ulysses has 50 lines of dialogue in it? I articulated how much I dislike the theming and storytelling of Lonesome Road and how it's outright contradictory when we stream this, and I don't think I'll retread that here because, well, we've got better things to do, like making a ton of money. We're taking advantage of how you can leave the divide and come back at any time to make a ton of caps. Enemies here have highly leveled gear, and since we're taking out so many of them, we're getting more than enough sets to repair it all back to 100%. We quickly tap out the commissary machines for how many caps they can give us, even with us also cleaning out any useful items that we can get from them and still have more than enough left over that we also have to go out into the main game and find other places to sell off our gear. We even are making sure to save individual sets of each item back at Novak for our own collection. We're also making sure to save California compliant weapons we can use, like the previously discussed nail gun and the industrial hand, which at this point we just have objectively better versions of both of those, like for melee and range, so there's no point in keeping them aside from collecting. We're still running the stealth suit since the special buffs we get from it are working wonders for us. We'll replace it eventually once we're added the DLCs, but for now it's got just enough damage threshold to keep us going, with the special variant of the Ranger helmet we get here also filling things out. It saves us a lot of weight too versus heavy armor or even power armor. There is one enemy that we are persistently having trouble with, and it's the one that we've been hassled with since starting Old World Blues: level scaling. The tunnelers get pretty bad in larger groups when they start doing damage and taking hits that theoretically do more damage than their entire HP pool, and then we get into Rar's lair. Rar is very much supposed to be a not quite scripted set piece fight, where if you're smart and observant, you'll notice that there's a warhead just above where she's sleeping. Too bad we can't use that since it's against the rules. Also, it's too bad because Rar is a unique variant of a Deathclaw and therefore level scale. She is comically tanky, obscenely fast, and kills us in one hit no matter what armor we wear, and I think at our present level she may be doing more damage than it's possible for a player character to have in their HP pool, but I have not checked that. It took a lot more tries than I'd have liked to get out of Rar's cave, and I also noticed that even the non-marked Deathclaws seem to be unique variants for Lonesome Road, as they are doing far more damage than they should according to base stats of a regular Deathclaw, and now they pose a problem because they're showing up in packs later in the DLC. All struggles aside, I am still flying up in levels, and I've ran out of skills that I need to put points into, and I'm starting to fill out other skills, like energy weapons and science. Well, science all the way to maximum. Originally in the main game version of this challenge, I completely wrote off energy weapons because on paper, there were only 2 viable weapons, which, while they seem pretty good, would require a massive investment to gain access to them. And by the time I was able to make that investment, I would have better alternatives, theoretically. That, however, did not take into account things like breaking the level 30 barrier, as I ended the original run hitting level 30 right as I defeated Lanius. I've got points to burn and some really tough enemies to deal with. I've also been collecting up all the spent microfusion cells I've been finding because there was no reason for me not to do that, as they're weightless even in hardcore mode. I can recycle them, and I have enough perk points to spare to get efficient recycling. And my science skill is high enough to where I can convert microfusion cells into max charge cells. I have an already solid weapon in the hollow rifle, which fits all the rules that I need to follow for the challenge run, and an absurd amount of high-level ammo for it. Lucky for me, the state of California hasn't really said anything about overclocking your bullets and those hand loads. Holy moly, the hollow rifle packs a punch. I was getting worried that I was going to have a harder time in the end game, but since I went and grabbed this thing, nothing can really stand up to more than 3 max charge shots. Sure, it's got a very low ammo capacity, a very slow, clunky rate of fire, and is very hard to handle, but all those things also make it allowable for this challenge. Let's go deal with Sir Yaps-a-Lot. And now for confronting Ulysses. He who is tied with Frank Horrigan for the strongest stats in a Fallout game and who yaps like no one else. He goes down like an absolute chump. I don't know if it's perhaps after getting feedback about dead money, if they maybe tweaked the detection to make it a little more reasonable to slip past Ulysses versus Father Elijah, or if perhaps Ulysses just won't aggro until you come up and talk to him, so you're free to wander around a bit, and I guess he's unconcerned with how I turned off his stupid robots to even the odds a bit. I know you can speech check your way out of this fight, but I want to make sure this guy never yaps at anyone again. The fight isn't that bad. Even with Ulysses summoning as many of his little burned friend as he can, it's manageable, and frankly, he still goes down like a chump. Since we previously established that Ed E is not allowed for this run, I have him burn himself out to disable the nukes, and with that, it's time to finish the base game. Well, I guess it's time to start doing everything else. We are level 41, midway to 42, as we decide to finally start following the main quest. I decide that I'm gonna do some things differently, like not usurping Elder McNamara in the BOS questline because I now have 100 points in energy weapons, and that means I have a reason to go to the Silver Rush. There is one weapon that I can get there that's better than the hollow rifle or the brush gun. The Gauss rifle. It's allowed according to my master list, which while I initially didn't think it was, my friend in the gun shop ruled it was allowable despite having a pistol grip on a long gun because it's only a single shot weapon. I lawfully purchased my new rifle that is about as end game as it gets. I wait 10 days and load it up with my overclocked bullets. I guess I should start doing the Bleed Me Dry quest now too because I want to get the dinner bell since I got the shotgun perks for the endgame. The lesser animals go down about as easy as you'd expect, and they're not what I'm concerned with. We've got to clear out Quarry Junction for Bleed Me Dry as part of the criteria for the challenge. This was really tough when we played the base game and one-shot Deathclaws now that we're out of the level scale DLCs. So the challenge run has sort of devolved into a normal, albeit very overpowered run of Fallout New Vegas. At a certain point I stopped bothering to stream it as it got to where it was just a lot of running around back and forth to get things done for quest lines related to fulfilling the requirements for the challenge, aka resolving every major faction quest line to the best of our abilities, defeating the legendary Cazador, and so on. I went for the bonus goals too originally in the main game, like taking out a faction HQ, which was even easier this time around. I didn't even have to kite Kaisar and his Praetorians out of the tent because we're just that strong that we can take them all right inside of it. You'll get the second C in dialectics when you all prove to me that it's not a pseudoscience. There really is a lot of just running around in New Vegas when you're first discovering areas, and you really feel it when you're going out to make contact with the major factions and nothing can touch you. I went to Jacobstown just to do the quest lines there and did Rex's full quest line too just to see what they were like, and I had to go over there for the Cazador hunt anyway. Hell, I stopped bothering to have companions around after a certain point because it was too much of a hassle to dismiss them whenever I needed to pop back to the sink to unload loot, go back to the Mojave, and then go get them again. Plus, Boone and Rex just weren't keeping up. I eventually just stopped bothering to record this stuff on my own time because it's things we already did last time around, and I'm trying to get frugal with my hard drive space here. Have you seen how much computer parts cost lately? Everything went smoothly, and we're on our way to the final confrontation. Everything is basically the same as before, except now I have Boone with me and I am near the DLC level cap. Oh, I also did the Deathclaw Promontory thing, and I got my hands on the advanced power arm. Oh, and I managed to fully sneak by the NCR heavies guarding the controls of the dam, so I don't have to kill them, and therefore I am still in good standing with the NCR. But that's not what we're here to revisit. I'm here for my rematch against Legate Lanius. In the old version of this challenge, I was down to 357 ammo and 12 gauge when I got to him, and it took me more deaths than the rest of the run combined to defeat him. This time, I am ready. Another thing that was brought to my attention during the last run is that in order to purchase a firearm in California, part of the paperwork you have to fill out is stating that you are not on or addicted to any sort of narcotics, and I took that into account. I have abstained from using any chems in this entire run up until this point, but I have been collecting them as I went along. I didn't need to purchase any more firearms at this point. I have all the ones in the game I could possibly want, and now I have a whole lot of Jet, Psycho, Slasher, and a bunch of other things I found on some pretty twitchy fiends. I'm gonna see what happens when I take all of them at the same time. What happens is that Chump Lanius goes down before he can even touch me. That just leaves General Oliver. These fools think they can get me like they did last time. But now I have the power of Turbo and the full might of California compliance at my side. I'm gonna wipe you off the face of the Mojave, and then I'm bringing California compliance to the world! So this challenge ended up being a good deal harder at first, but it got way easier as I got past the first DLC. I made it a point to not do any leveling outside the DLCs once I was in, but the sheer amount of levels you gain just by doing what you need to do to finish the DLCs makes you absurdly powerful, and that's not even considering the buffs you get. I don't even think it would have made a difference if I entered the DLCs earlier than I did, because the sheer amount of experience I would have gotten would just get me to the levels I was at when I started at level 10 anyway. I'm gonna call it now and say that if you want to do the New Vegas California Compliance Challenge, DLCs will trivialize it, and if anything, I think you should not only not do them, but outright disable them. Gun runners and all. The perks you get from each one, the insanely powerful weapons you get even if you can't buy most of the guns since none of the vendors count as licensed dealers, and the sheer amount of experience you get fed makes the base game a cakewalk by the time you're done with dead money and frankly boring. Heck, you could even spin it as after level 30, all the challenges in the base game get trivial, so just don't increase the level cap too. If you want to do this with strictly base game New Vegas, and personally, do the Viva New Vegas thing if you don't mind. Like, geez, this has been like life-changing. I want to thank you all for watching and for your patience while I got around to this. I actually started this run almost immediately after I published the original challenge run of the base game, but I am a solo operation, so I spin a lot of plates and sometimes things need to get moved around or postponed. I have a good idea of what next video is going to be leading up to Halloween in July, and I think it's time we had ourselves an immersed sim. Also, as I alluded to throughout the video, I streamed most of this challenge up until it got really boring, and I'm actually going to start streaming again over on Twitch now that Subnautica 2's out. Links in the description description if you want to tune in. Let me know in the comments if you can think of anything else that might make this challenge more interesting or a new rule set I can try out. Honestly, I'm up for anything as an excuse to play more Fallout New Vegas. Don't forget to like the video so that other people can find it and subscribe to see the next one. Now let's sign off. Remember that no matter what you do, be it painting, writing songs, or making funny little skits, what you do is not content. It is art. Your art is special because it's made by you, and it's made out of all your skills, passions, and aspirations, so no one else but you can do it. So get out there and fight for yourself by fighting for your art. Stay saucy.
Behold, a loaf. A very high quality loaf. Look at those tucked in feet. The roundness. The treasure hoard. He loafing. Look at you, looking all too proud to be silly. You were just being silly, playing with the one toy that's not here. He's got like a little flamingo doll he loves to throw around, but only when we aren't looking, or when he thinks we aren't looking. Oh, you're not feeling playtime anymore? Fine, if you don't want to play, I'll play with the thing. Look at how enriched I am right now. You too could just be so enriched if you just play with the toys. You're just too cool for anything. This is the face of a goober.